What are you using to look at that comparison?
Other people's data.
You use other people's data to look at data? That doesn't make any sense.
So like if I went
No,
outside and
let
said
me
there's
reiterate my
5
question.
fire hydrants.
I don't think you understood, or maybe you missed it. I asked you how you know your senses are reliable. You said you compare it to other people. But then I asked you, when you compare the data for your senses and somebody else's senses, what are you using to look at that comparison?
Both of us are using our brains, which is all we have to use.
Your senses, right?
Well, your brain is not a sense.
Well, all right, but you don't look at things with your brain. You look at things with your eyes, right?
Yeah, your eyes provide the sense data.
Okay. So I asked you how you know that your senses are reliable, and you said
I never said they
them.
were.
Okay, so if you don't know that your senses are reliable, and you can't justify that to any degree, how can you know things to be true based on your senses?
I can. So let me reiterate. When I compare like my sense data, if I go outside and say I see 5 fire hydrants outside, and then 100 other people go outside and say, yeah, I see the same 5 fire hydrants, it's a pretty good cumulative case that there are 5 fire hydrants outside. Now, it might be true that one person walks outside and says, hey, I see 4. Well, their sense data might be wrong.
Okay, and the reason I keep interrupting you is because you're going on these long tangents about things that are completely irrelevant that I've already showed you are wrong. For example, you have to use your senses. Is it not true? You have to use your senses in order to even understand what these other people are saying about their senses.
Oh, yeah, you have to use your senses to interact with the world.
Okay, so you can use your senses to justify the reliability of your senses?
You have to use your senses in combination with other people's data and other things in the real world. Like, so for example, if I say
but the data, like you're not getting it. That data has to come through your senses in order for you to understand them. So you can't use that data.
You can.
All right, so you're okay with circular reasoning then?
No, I presuppose that I exist and that my brain processes things.
Yo, yeah, he's not catching that. Your boy DZ. He's missing this. He's saying my senses aren't reliable, but if I can reliably agree with other people about what they're sensing and I'm sensing, then we make a case. So it's just mere observation, opinion, and agreement is what he's pointing out to him here.
Okay, so can we presuppose things without justification?
That's what you do all the time. You're doing it in this debate right now with your God.
Okay, that's not answering the question.
Your religion.
Oh, catching him on the tu quoque. Good, because that's exactly what happens all the time, right? He's trying to ask him about something he's doing, and he tries to shift it over to him.
All right, so you're okay with circular reasoning then?
No, I presuppose that I exist and
also, for him to say no, think about that. He's reasoning in a circle. He doesn't see this.
that my brain processes things.
Okay, so can we presuppose things without justification?
That's what you do all the time. You're doing it in this debate.
Well, he did say we, so okay. He said we, so maybe that's fair that he went to him. So I'll retract that.
That's your God. Okay, that's not answering the question.
Your religion is a presuppose.
This is my time. Let me, actually answer the question. Can we presuppose things without justification?
I think there are some cases, yeah.
Okay, so Jesus is the Messiah. It's my presupposition, and there's no justification for it. What problem do you have with that?
Well, my problem is that it's a claim that is unlikely to be true, and because there's data that contradicts it.
But I don't need to justify it. You just said I don't need to, right?
Just because you don't need to justify it doesn't make it true.
Okay, so then you...
Yeah, he's conceded the debate, right? His ultimate presupposition is the truth of Jesus Christ. Do I need to justify it? No. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you. Let's see what he does, though.
I don't need to, right?
Just because you don't need to justify it doesn't make it true.
Okay, so then you can't say that you presuppose that you exist and that justifies your existence, right?
Okay, do you think I exist?
It's not your turn to ask.
Oh, right. You move to a question when you can't answer, right? Presuppose I exist. being called on the justification of that. And then he moves to asking questions to get him to agree. So he's stopping him. No, I'm not. It's not for you to ask me questions. It's for you to justify what you're saying here, what you're claiming here.
Justifies your existence, right?
Okay, do you think I exist?
It's not your turn to ask questions, and that's not my question. I asked you a specific question. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
If you can't just presuppose things without justification to say that they're true, then you can't presuppose your existence to say that you exist, correct?
Well, I didn't say that you should presuppose things to be that they're true.
All right. Well, you're not getting
Your
it.
question was whether or not you can presuppose things
It's okay. We can move on.
without justification.
I do. I know
if
that
you can't- Go ahead.
want to take. Give me 1 second to. It just. Thank you. I know that you want to do a presuppositional approach tonight with Wi-Fi in terms of the epistemology of like how do we know what we know if we're going to make any claims about whether or not Jesus fulfilled the messianic prophecy. I do want to give you a chance if you could just briefly tie some of this back just so that the arguments are clearer to the audience, because this is like the alternative approach to addressing this question rather than Justin, who
Right.
plans on taking.
All
a
right.
more
I can do
standard-
something for you. Yeah, and Justin can totally do that in his cross-examination, and I will freely answer all of his questions.
I'm asking
problem
you to
here-
do it right now.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason I'm taking this approach is because, and I don't want to go on a monologue here, but I'm not sure how to do that for you.
If you could just in 30 seconds, the way that I said
Yeah.
as an example.
So
Just
in
like-
my opening, I'm just pulling up my opening here. Justin, when you talk about prophecy, are you making metaphysical claims?
No, I'm just using dictionary definitions of what words actually mean, and I think that the dictionary defines the word prophecy pretty well.
Okay, is a prophecy a supernatural thing?
It can be, doesn't have to be.
Okay, is that not a metaphysical claim?
No.
So saying if something is or isn't supernatural is not a metaphysical claim.
I didn't say that. I
Well,
said a
when-
prophecy can be.
Wait a second.
That. I
Well,
said a
when-
prophecy can be.
Oh, I guess they just muted out. Dang.
So basically, what I'm trying to do here is when we speak of prophecy, we're making what's called metaphysical claims. Metaphysics is the study, what we know to exist, what is true about reality. And the reason I'm so hard on philosophy is I believe that you don't need to know exactly how Jesus fulfills the prophecies in order to know that he did, because knowledge is an epistemic claim. And epistemology is just the study of how we know what is real, or like I said about metaphysics, how do we know our metaphysics? So I know I'm using a bit of jargon some people may not be familiar with, but when we say, I know Jesus is the Messiah, or I know that Jesus is not the Messiah, it's a very philosophical epistemic claim, which ties back into the metaphysics part. And that's in my best 20 seconds to show that I'm actually very much on topic here.
Right. The presuppositional approach is very much on topic. Most people don't understand it because they want to assume what they want to assume. When you start challenging what they assume and presuppose, they tend to lack justification. That's where you get into epistemology. How do you know, how and why you know things? The metaphysics is pointing to the nature of the being, the thing they're describing. The two actually are interconnected, metaphysics and epistemology. Secular philosophy tries to separate them, but you have to have something that exists in order for you to know it. In order for you to know something, something has to exist. So they exist in conjunction. They really aren't separate. And also, the third pillar is going to be ethics, which is key. The human behavior, the entailment behind the argument itself, What are you actually saying? How do you, how are you navigating this conversation? You want to point out the oughts and the shoulds that the atheist is smuggling in there because they have no accountability to say why anyone should or ought to do something. Even they'll say this about themselves, that they don't really know. And that's where you want to push them into their own position, holding them accountable, saying, I really only have my opinion and preference, and I really don't have any thrust to saying I ought or you should do something. It's just my opinion extended into what I'm calling an argument that's based on my feelings. So that's what Wi-Fi is doing, and that is going to be the most powerful form of argumentation. Why go back and forth with somebody when you can point out that they don't even know what they're talking about when you're questioning their own theory? DZ here doesn't even seem to acknowledge metaphysics. He's negating the idea of metaphysics, and he doesn't even seem to realize that he's always dancing in the metaphysical realm. And again, the epistemological side of it, anytime he makes a claim, that ties the two together.
Okay, is that good? Can I continue with the cross-examination? Cool. All right.
So right there, you have the moderator having to stop him, say, can you kind of explain this for the audience? Maybe, I'm guessing at this point, the moderator, James, understands it, but I don't think DZ and most of the audience does, which is fine. Slow it down. Have them explain it. This is a problem that's not going away for them.
How much? Where is the time, by the way?
11 minutes and 43 seconds. I can give you about a minute back, just because I know that
Cool.
for, like I said,
Thank
a
you.
lot of these people tuned in late, and so they're trying to understand. So I appreciate you clarifying.
Thank you. I'll definitely take that minute. All right, so I'm going to go a little bit out of order here just because I want to make sure that I come to this part. Justin, can you tell me what a logical contradiction is? He's muted. You're muted, so.
Sorry about that. A logical contradiction is when two statements are made and both of them can't actually be true.
Right. So would you agree with the definition of P and not P, a statement that cannot be true under any circumstances?
Essentially, yeah, that's how it's
Okay.
described in Philbro speak.
Is this
What does Philbro speak? I think he's trying to minimize the idea of philosophy because that's going to be his weakness. Is Philbros or philosophy or presuppositional questions? That's going to be his weakness, and he knows it. So I'm guessing that's why he added that term.
this statement a contradiction? The more you learn, the less you know.
Well, it depends on how literal you take some of the words, because
Tog, how do we test that Wi-Fi isn't just making things up without demonstration? Well, that's on you, isn't it? You got to figure that out, don't you?
more you learn, the more you realize that there are things you don't know. So I wouldn't take that as a contradiction. I think there's an underlying meaning to it.
Right, perfect. That's exactly the direction I wanted to go to. So if I were to say that what is meant by the more you learn, the less you know, is that literally the more things you learn, the less information you know, would that be a contradiction?
Yeah, so if you said the more things you learn, the less information you know, I would count that as a contradiction, because that seems to be more of a statement and less of an idiom.
Right. So can you see how having different interpretations of the same statement can make things seem like a contradiction?
Oh, certainly.
Great. Now let's say that you only had access to the interpretation of the statement that made it seem contradictory. Would it be a contradiction?
I would imagine not. Like if you were just unaware of English idioms, it's possible that you could
Right.
misinterpret it.
Perfect.
Good. So he's moving him into pointing out that Wi-Fi is moving DZ into a place where he's getting him to demonstrate that he relies on on objective reality and metaphysics and immaterial ideas by answering these questions. And that's why Wi-Fi, I think, is very patient about this, because he knows where he's moving him. And as long as he moves him in that direction, he can navigate this entire debate. He knows how to do this. So we'll see what happens.
So just to clarify, if there is a possibility that you have the wrong interpretation, then there can't be a logical contradiction, even if you don't know what the possible interpretation is, right?
No, I disagree with that. There still could be a contradiction. even
No,
if
I'm
you don't know
saying if there's a possibility that you have the wrong interpretation, then there can't be a logical contradiction, even if you don't know what the possible interpretation is.
Nope, still disagree. If a statement is made, it can always be contradictory, whether I know it or
Right,
not.
but if you have two,
Statement is made, it can always be contradictory, whether I know it or not. So an objective reality exists, an objective truth exists. Good.
like, let's go back to the statement I just gave. If all you had was the interpretation of the more you learn, the less you know, is that literally the more things you learn, the less things you know, then that wouldn't necessarily be a contradiction because you're just missing information, right?
No, I agree. I didn't say that
Right.
that was a contradiction.
Good move as well, because I think he's going after the fact that he tries to find contradictions in the Bible, and he's pointing out, without going into all that DZ on his own account is going to say that he could be missing information. He could be wrong about that. So all the contradictions he thinks he understands in the Bible, he could be missing information, and he could be wrong about that as well. So it's good movement. You know, he's treading in the right direction here, getting him to bring out things that he will utilize later.
And you asked a
Right.
generic question about an
So
actual
what's true of
contradiction.
my specific example is also true of the general example. Would you not say so?
I don't know what the general example
Well, I just gave it
is.
to you. Let me give it back to you. If there's a possibility that you have the wrong interpretation, then there can't be a logical contradiction, even if you don't know what the possible interpretation is. To word it another way, in order to say something is contradictory, that means it would have to be logically impossible. There is no possible way to make this statement non-contradictory.
Well, I think that's true in a philosophical sense, but like there are situation.
True in a philosophical sense, but it's an interesting statement.
Well, I think that's true in a philosophical sense, but like there are situation contradictions too. Like if I said that I'm going to go to the store on Sunday, but then it turns out that I didn't go to the store on Sunday, there's no logical contradiction there. It's just something that just didn't happen. Like, so if I actually went to the store on Saturday, then those two things are in contradiction with each other.
He's bringing in a confusing example of like a promise that wasn't fulfilled. It's not a logical contradiction, but I think he's trying to make a distinction here.
Okay. Is your interpretation of scripture the only valid interpretation?
Oh no, of course not.
Okay. Can your
No, of course not. Does that mean he thinks it's valid and others are valid?
interpretation of scripture change in the future?
Certainly.
If your interpretation of scripture isn't the only valid interpretation and it's subject to change, is there a logical possibility that your interpretation is wrong and that there is a correct interpretation available?
There's always a possibility that I'm wrong and someone else is right.
If you have
So this is a good line of questioning, because he's breaking them down to the epistemological uncertainty of, well, I really don't know anything. And when you get someone on that level, well, guess what happens when they start critiquing you and trying to point out things that they don't like about what you're saying? They have no actual knowledge behind that. This is why you want to draw these things out up front, because you can point this back to them. Oh, but you don't really know. Oh, but you're not really sure. And in fact, none of this is stable on your own account. You're just hoping that I'll grant you some sort of knowledge and answer your questions, and also he's assuming the ethic behind his argument, which see if Wi-Fi gets into.
Have an interpretation of an Old Testament passage and you try to pit that interpretation against the New Testament, is that actually a logical contradiction?
If it contradicts, yeah.
But you just said that there's always a possibility that you could have the interpretation of the Old Testament passage wrong, right?
There's always a possibility I can have it right.
Okay. It would have to be a logical impossibility, correct?
If it's a logical contradiction, yeah.
Okay. So if there is a possible interpretation that you don't have access to, then your interpretation of the Old Testament passage pitted against the interpretation against the New could not be an actual logical contradiction.
Well, it certainly could if the two texts contradict each other. I'll demonstrate that later.
But if you're just admitted that there's a possibility that your interpretation that you're trying to pit against the New Testament could be wrong, that means there's a possibility, a logical possibility, that it's actually not contradictory. Right?
There's a logical possibility that Matthew is wrong too.
So it can't be a logical contradiction. Why aren't you seeing that connection there?
I didn't say that it was a logical contradiction.
Okay. It actually can't be.
It certainly can be. Matthew can be wrong about the Old Testament.
Wouldn't you have to have access to every possible interpretation there was?
Right. This is outside of his epistemological scope. It's far outside of it. He's given him a good little rundown here of why he can't make those claims. But this is gonna go further into all these things. He doesn't know if that one's right. He doesn't know if he's right. This could be wrong. There's always the possibility. So he's leaving everything open. He has no commitment to what is real and what is true, but he wants to come in and open up a 2,000-page manual and try to get you to allow him to point out what he doesn't like about it. But when you question him on this level, which he calls Philbro level, well, he really dismantles himself if you follow how he's answering. But that's why he doesn't want to go into philosophy, which everyone is utilizing, by the way. That's why he calls it Philbros, I would suggest, because he knows that's going to be his weakness. He said, I've heard him say in the past, DZ, that presuppositional argument is the lowest form of argument. But what is happening right here? This guy Wi-Fi is a presuppositional approach, and he's picking apart his epistemology and breaking down DZ, who's basically now saying, well, I don't really know anything. There's always a possibility for the contrary. So he's showing that what he's bringing to the table is suggestions, opinions, and preferences, while he assumes a subjective ethic to argue. That, in fact, is going to be the lowest form of argumentation and opinion based on a subjective ethic.
Was to rule them all out, to know that it was a logical contradiction?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, so you just don't understand what logical contradiction is then, right?
No, because words have meanings.
Right, and I'm giving you the meaning of a logical contradiction and you're disagreeing with it. It's fine. How much time do I have left, James?
You currently have 8 minutes left.
Perfect. So how do you know what is and is not scripture, Justin?
Well, I'm willing to accept, for the sake of this debate, that the Old Testament is considered scripture that needs to be fulfilled. Obviously, I would disagree that the New Testament is interpreting the Old Testament correctly.
So you're just making up your position?
Ooh, nice. Correct response right there. Excellent.
Only have 8 minutes left.
Perfect. So how do you know what is and is not scripture, Justin?
Well, I'm willing to accept, for the sake of this debate, that the Old Testament is considered scripture that needs to be fulfilled. Obviously, I would disagree that the New Testament is interpreting the Old Testament correctly.
So you're just making up your position?
No, I'm accepting the position that would have been accepted by the people who wrote the scripture.
Kind of answers that.
And how do you know that's what they would have accepted?
Because they told us, they wrote about it, they enumerated the books
Who?
for us.
Who's where?
The Jewish people did. So if you read the writings of
The Jewish.
Josephus,
Sorry.
read the writings of Josephus and Philo and others, they tell you what they consider canonical.
Okay, so Josephus and Philo are the authority on what is considered canon.
No, I don't.
No, but when it's convenient for me to say that they are so I can make an argument, yes. Great line of questioning by Wi-Fi here.
What is considered canon?
No, I don't think so. I think the canon could be variable. In fact, some people disagreed on whether or not Daniel should be included in the canon, and they did so for a long time.
Okay, so you're just arbitrarily accepting a certain number of Old Testament books as the canon?
Right. He's driving to an excellent point here. He's just arbitrarily choosing what he thinks is true and is not true. And his commitment to what is true and the knowledge of how he gets to truth are unknown. And that's exactly what Wi-Fi wants to point out in this line of questioning, is that he really doesn't know or have any grounds to be speaking against anything. Certainly not the scriptures. This is an excellent line of questioning. You know, why go into the scriptures with the knucklehead when you can point out he doesn't even have grounds to get into the scriptures? He doesn't even have a commitment or knowledge of what is or is not true.
I'm accepting the Old Testament books that the tradition accepts.
Okay, what's tradition?
The Jewish tradition.
Still, though, whatever he accepts, you know, if Wi-Fi wants to continue to question, it's going to become an arbitrary acceptance. Well, I accept that because I think that's true. How do you know it's true? Well, because these guys agreed. Whatever he comes up with is just going to go into a circle of preference and opinion based on his personal experience. It's as far as he gets. But he can't even really get there if you want to keep going. It's all, you can break that up as well.
Mean that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah.
Which Jewish tradition? Because there are different ones, right?
Kind of. There are 4 different sects in Judaism, and the Christians seem to be of the sect of the Essenes, and their Old Testament included the same as the standard Old Testament plus the Apocrypha.
Okay, so which tradition are you going to accept and why?
I would accept all of the traditions of the Jews, so I would accept even the Apocryphal books.
So you don't actually have a determining method to say which books are in the canon?
Oh, I actually don't need one. I'm just willing to.
He doesn't need one. He doesn't need a method of determination. How's that going to work?
Don't actually have a determining method to say which books are in the canon?
Oh, I actually don't need one. I'm just willing to accept.
Okay,
what
but the
say.
Jews say contradictory things.
Oh, hey, Peter, I see you out there. I wanted to tell you something interesting, Peter. When you hear necessity from these guys, from the unbeliever, you can start to challenge necessity itself. It's a universal idea, right? So most of these knucklehead unbelievers reject universals. Like we heard Wild Heart the other day, there are no universals. How are you making the universal negative claim? There are no universals. Oh, that's just my opinion, he answers. You know, you get silly stuff like that. But on top of it, he mentioned necessity, and a lot of people do. Like DZ just did here. I don't need to. That's a universal idea, necessity. So this is something that's very prominent in the unbelieving community. You can start calling them on, get into universals and particulars.
As you just admitted. Okay, that's fine. So that proves my point.
Willing to accept.
Okay, but
oh, I actually don't need one. I'm just willing to accept.
okay,
what
but the
say.
Jews say contradictory things, as you just admitted. Okay, that's fine. So that proves my point. So I want to go back to this. Does the subject of prophecy necessarily include a discussion about metaphysics?
I don't think so. The question is,
Of course it does. And also, again, that would be a trap question because he's asking about necessity. So it's not that it's a loaded question. It's just that it's a question that he's going to answer. And it shows you that the unbeliever just assumes things that they can't account for. So that's the task that Wi-Fi has. He has to constantly keep stopping him and say, no, wait, how are you assuming necessity? Or, why are you saying it's not metaphysical, but then utilizing metaphysics just over and over again? It's very tedious, very relevant.
when predictions are made, did the predictions come true?
Okay. Can you tell me what metaphysics is then?
Metaphysics is the study of things that are not necessarily tangible. So, for example, if you're trying to discover the ontology of something, you would use metaphysics to explore that. But it's not relevant to just saying, hey, did something happen that was predicted?
Okay, but in order for something to be a thing, isn't that a metaphysical claim?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
But yes, it is, but he doesn't think so. So he's given him a philosophy 101 lesson here, right? And that's why DZ is like Phil Bros. That's what is going to make you lose these debates, is the fact that you've written off philosophy as Phil Bros. You're getting schooled right now. I mean, literally, he's doing philosophy 101 on you.
Physical.
Something happened that was predicted?
Okay, but in order for something to be a thing, isn't that a metaphysical claim?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Why not?
Because I don't need metaphysics to know that I'm holding a pen right now.
Really? Wow.
We define
So
what pen
if
is,
you
I'm
just
holding it.
define what something.
The level he's on right now is, I mean, it makes sense.
I'm a little bit confused on Wi-Fi Gospels. Is he saying for the something for all things being a something, there needs to be a metaphysical, or just the idea of something? I'm getting lost in the word something and what he means by that. Because if he's talking about origin, then it would appear to be something physical rather than something metaphysical. Something had to be there, right? And it doesn't make sense for a metaphysical, which inquires physical, in order to be, if for us, what I mean by that is by us thinking about it, right? And that's what we call the metaphysical, is a thoughts about it. So what is the physical that produces the metaphysical of because that's a something, right? So what is that something then? And I think that's why Justin had to sit there and pause. But again, I'm just assuming.
What he's trying to figure out the something for.
Right, because well, it doesn't make sense for Wi-Fi to say something is a metaphysic. And that's where I got confused at. So maybe I misunderstood what he was coming in later. So
it's sort of the Aristotelian idea of substance. Like there's a substance that's physical, and then there's immaterial substance. If that helps. Like it's the way that you use the word substance. It can be referred to as physical or material.
But immaterial is not the same thing as metaphysics. Because
Well,
something that's what I'm saying. If Wi-Fi meant immaterial for metaphysical, that's the wrong category, because metaphysical can only take place in minds, while immaterial is something that exists outside of us, right? So it's completely a separate category. Immaterial can exist without us having mind. That's not an issue.
Thing is, then it exists.
Yeah, I'm holding a pen right now. We define
So
what pen
if
is.
you
I'm
just-
The pen is the pen. I remember that with Richard Madsen, Wildheart, asking them about where are the laws of logic? What are they? What is the law of identity? Where does it exist in time and space? Because Richard Madsen, being a materialist, Wildheart, depending on the day, whatever he is, the pen is the pen. That's how they know that the law of identity exists. But they miss that you're asking about the law itself and how it exists, not
Right.
you demonstrating that a pen is a pen. You're just you're giving a demonstration of the application of the thing in question. So DZ here is lost in a similar way, where he's not even really addressing the ideas Wi-Fi is bringing out.
Yeah.
He's lost.
The idea of a pen, see, yeah, when you go into that, what makes a pen implies an author. And so what a pen is a tool for an author. And that's what a pen is. And a pen can come in many shapes and forms, so long as there's an author for that pen to be in use. Like that pen, any pen's made for an author, because pens only exist for authors anyway. So I think that's an easy way to suss that out. It's the principle of what does the pen belong to, right? The pen is nothing by itself. It's designated and created for something or someone. And the only thing that fits that is just author. Sorry for circling 3 times.
Holding it.
Define what something is, then it exists.
I'm holding a pen right now. We define
So
what pen
if
is.
you
I'm
just
holding it.
define what something is, then it exists.
Yeah, it's an abstract idea. We designed a pen. We created a name for it, and when I'm holding it, I say I'm
Okay,
holding a pen.
So I define Jesus as the Messiah, and therefore he exists as the Messiah.
So yeah, you want to show how their line of reasoning, their logic leads them to a place where they're in a debate where they go, oh, I didn't know that you come about reality that way. So now my argument is Jesus the Messiah because I said so. I win. That's what he's doing there. And it's actually a fair move.
Would that be acceptable? Right.
No, I don't think so, because the Messiah actually has defined.
As the Messiah, and
When I'm holding it, I say I'm
okay,
holding a pen.
So I define Jesus as the Messiah, and therefore he exists as the Messiah. Would that be acceptable? Right.
No, I don't think so, because the Messiah actually has defined characteristics, and we find those defining characteristics in the Jewish text in the Old Testament. So the question is whether or not he matches what the Old Testament says about the Messiah.
Let's see here.
Actually, I'm surprised he actually took that angle as an atheist, because the term Messiah obviously just means messenger. So it doesn't have to, or Christian, or not Messiah. I'm thinking of Christ. Christ just means anointed, right? And a messenger to come. So you don't have to adhere to the standard of the Bible for Christ to be someone important. You can totally take Christ at a transhumanist level, and there's no Bible needed, like no doctrine needed to say that Christ can be your Messiah. And at that point,
How'd you find out about that?
It's through the idea of transhumanism and what it means to ascend. And so Jesus had, let me explain it more. Because Jesus is such a transformative name, like his name goes into everything that people identify with his being, or this character at least, that's named Jesus. So his name has been able to transform the shape of humanity just by his mere existence, which is a type of transcendence. And if you want to follow like him, you should follow him. So like I said, it doesn't lead to Christian God, but you can still have him as a Messiah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, he's adhering to the doctrine of the Bible, which isn't necessary at all. For the claim that Wi-Fi is making, just like if you take away if you say that he's not doing it under Christian pretenses, and you just hear that, like Christ is my Messiah, that's fine and dandy. That doesn't mean your religion isn't true. It's just your own personal conviction at that point. The question whether would be if that matters for everyone in salvation, right? In this case, it would seem not. So.
You're saying you can have your own personal Jesus in a sense?
Right. It would be an idol. In Christian views, it would be an idol, right? It would be a form of idolatry. But in practicality,
if Wi-Fi's worldview, the Christian worldview, is the right worldview, you would argue against him saying, oh, well, no, you can also be a Christian by accident?
No, it's not. Like I said, I don't think, because at that point you're not confessing God of the Bible, right? You're two separate identities in Jesus. One, Jesus just as a person, doing his thing, and then transform the world through whatever acts that took place that are said to be recorded about him. And that's about it. So yeah, that's all I'm saying. Like I said, it would technically be idolatry.
Is truth a concept?
I think truth is a concept. I don't think it's a transcendental.
Are concepts mind dependent?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. Before humans existed, did truth exist?
I would say no, because it's a concept.
Okay. So truth, it could not be true that the universe
Good. So he's moving into subjectivity here.
existed before humans existed.
No, the universe could still exist.
Oh, but truth didn't exist before humans
Yeah,
existed.
Wi-Fi
universe
is
isn't
making a
truth.
mistake here.
Okay, but the universe.
I said Wi-Fi is
that?
making the mistake here. When
What's
he's
that?
saying he's trying to use truth as in the state of affairs, like an is. So he's trying to make truth as in an is, but the is always exists before the truth, and it's a subset of the is. Truth is, because there has to be an is in order
The
for there
is
to be the
always
truth.
exists before the truth. You
Say
said?
that again.
You said the is always exists before the truth.
There has to be an is in order for that thing to be true if it is. And what he's saying is, it's
Yeah.
conceptualized. The thing that's being conceptualized doesn't need to have a mind in order to be there.
The rock.
Right. If there's a rock, right? If there's a rock, it doesn't need a mind. It is, and it being there is true, whether there's a mind to conceive of it or not, because it is.
It couldn't be true that the universe existed if truth didn't exist.
Well, you have to be in existence to make the claim. So obviously, no, it wouldn't be true that the universe existed because no one was there to make the claim that the universe existed. But it would be true that the universe existed.
Are the laws of logic concepts?
I agree. Yeah, I think the laws of logic are
Okay.
concepts.
Are-
They're descriptive,
For example, the law of non-contradiction, is that universal?
as far as we know.
Okay.
As far as we know. What kind of answer is that? It seems to be the case. So now he's minimizing the laws of logic into a category of like, well, it seems that way. We don't know tomorrow, though.
So you would say then that concept is also mind dependent.
I think all concepts are necessarily mind dependent.
Okay. So did the law of logic exist before there were human minds?
No, I don't believe so.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. So now he's going to reduce the alleged laws of logic to being subjective of the mind, variant. In other words, he can hold the idea that these alleged laws are what he's perceiving, and he can't make any sort of objective claim to reality about these laws. He's just holding a personal belief about them.
Okay. So it could be true then that the universe both existed and did not exist in the same way at the same time before there were human minds.
No, because it's descriptive, not prescriptive.
I never said it was
Cool.
prescriptive. So, but what I'm saying is you have a universal mind-dependent concept, the law of logic, and you're saying if human minds weren't around, then it could not have existed, right?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is the ideas that we invented with our own brains, those ideas don't exist, but the actual reality that those ideas are describing does exist.
Okay, so
Yeah, we want to get into the reality of it, the concept behind. Sure.
now what you're saying is that
I was gonna say, is Wi-Fi only speaking of human minds in that case?
Yeah.
Because I wonder. The only reason why
Well,
is I wonder when it comes to animals and their
No.
hunting techniques and things. You don't
No.
think that they implement logic in the same way, or use rationality
I don't think
or anything like that?
it's necessary to go there. We'll call it a rabbit trail since you're going into the animal kingdom, right? Like it's just
Well, no, because we're
there's
talking
enough on
about
the table here. There's enough on the table here, dude.
there's a subject of minds that's being in questioned, and we're not alone to that idea of mind. So that's why I'm asking. I mean, for all intents and purposes, if we're going to go biblical, God used a donkey to speak. So I think it's very rational to bring up animals
What are you
in these
going
type
to
of
do?
conversations.
What are you going to do with it?
I'm just asking the question, like because if they
Well, where are you
can,
going
then
to go
how,
with it?
with what?
If somebody wants to talk about animals, all of a sudden, where are you going to go with it? It's just going to go back into human minds eventually. It's not going to,
How does it go back into human minds though?
because we're just taking it, we're deviating into animals, and then we're going to go back into the conversation. It's just a distraction.
I guess ultimately then is it truly a standalone thing then if it could be potential mimicry. So what we call our logic is really just something that we are borrowing from other species.
Okay, now you're really like getting silly, right? Like now you want to bring in other species as your dependence of logic. You rely on another species.
I think that we do a lot of monkey see, monkey do.
Okay, what does that have to do with the reliance of the actual law itself?
That these things come from external observation and we put them into metaphysical words in order to describe them.
Actual law of logic is not okay.
The actual reality that those ideals are describing does exist.
Okay, so now what you're saying is that the actual law of logic is not a concept. Just how we understand the law of logic is a concept.
Wrong.
So what is the law of logic then if it's not a
It's
concept?
a description of how the universe behaves as far as we know it.
Okay, and is a description a concept?
Yep, already said that.
Okay, so the law of logic is a concept.
Yep, already said.
All right, mind-dependent concept. No humans that have minds to have this concept. Laws of logic don't exist, right?
The law of logic doesn't exist even now. It's just a concept.
Nice. That's a great confession.
Why should it apply to our conversation? No humans
He
that
just
have minds.
dismantled everything. He just collapsed everything. I mean, he just dismissed the laws of logic, and he's going to rely on that throughout this whole conversation. That's the beauty of understanding and navigating people's presuppositions and assumptions. Say what you want about presuppositional apologetics, but look what he's just done to this man. Look what he's got him to admit here.
To have this concept. Laws of logic don't exist, right?
The law of logic doesn't exist even now. It's just a concept.
So
Logic doesn't.
all right, logic don't exist, right?
The law of logic doesn't exist even now. It's just a concept. The law of logic doesn't exist even now. It's just a concept.
So you need a little editing tool to show like a nuke going off right now.
How is that in any way a nuke though? Because you
Tog, I might just dismiss you for asking, and then you can go figure it out. Haha. No, I'll let him back. That's kind of mean, but seriously, dude.
I mean, I'm challenging you, and don't you want to be
You're
challenged? If you
challenging me?
don't, then it's fine.
Are you? I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
if someone says that the laws of logic don't exist, so let's debate. What do you say?
When do
Let's
you
have a-
need the
let's have a
logic to debate?
Let's have a debate, a logical debate, right? Let's talk about things that aren't contradictory, why that's the case. But the laws of logic don't exist. Go.
Well, for one, you said something about there was a claim made about the way things go on, and there are plenty of humans that go that aren't capable of achieving the laws of logic the way that other people are. So how is that in any case? That's where I'm getting confused on, like, where is the win in that? If God doesn't even hold people to that standard, why do we hold others to it? Is essentially what I'm thinking.
God doesn't hold people to what standard?
The laws of logic.
To be consistent, to have a pattern of sound words.
Yeah, I don't think that's implied within the Bible as in laws of logic. You can infer that that's more of a command.
So you think it's a command to have a pattern of sound words and to be consistent in your behavior aside or absent the laws of logic? You're doing that?
No, in command only becomes obedience. There's no logic in doing or not doing.
The logic is the laws of logic basically become tools for consistency in speech and behavioral patterns. It might be the way
Outside, perhaps I would agree with you. Perhaps outside of covenant, when it comes to things, but when it comes to God, I don't think obedience and logic apply.
Okay, well, look, I think Peter nails it right here. Tog is redirecting to obfuscate the claim that you don't need laws of logic to debate, right? Like, that is the point. That's where he nuked himself. You do, but you don't understand that. Like, aside from what you want to talk about, the man in the debate who's presupposing, utilizing, and relying on logic is now saying they don't exist. You don't see that as a problem.
There's an assumption made that he is utilizing logic correctly just because he seems coherent.
He just said what he's utilizing to be coherent doesn't exist. That's a problem for him.
I think what he means by exists is it doesn't exist physically.
You want to be friends with him or something? I mean, why are you? You're going to allow people to come in and say, yeah, lots of logic don't exist. Let's debate. And you're just going to be like, yeah, that's cool. Is this why you don't debate?
I do debate. No one ever actually debates me.
Well, you're debating right now and you're defending a guy who's just abandoned the laws of logic. So, why are you doing that?
He hasn't abandoned them. He says they don't exist.
Yeah. There's nothing to abandon, sure. Except he's using them, isn't he?
Okay, how can you demonstrate that he's using them just because we say that he is? That's the whole point.
Well,
We seem to be utilizing it, but we can't actually tell if we actually are. There's no other demonstration. We can speak of it. We can write it down, but that doesn't make it actual.
right, because you're
It's something
denying you're actually denying the fact that Wi-Fi's caught him in a contradiction, because you want to also abandon the laws of logic in order to make this case. He's caught in a contradiction.
That might be the case, but then again, what I'm questioning is that standard. And why is it the standard?
The standard being not to be contradictory. You can get that in as an agreement from all three of these gentlemen, typically, if you don't want to get into why that standard exists. You typically go into a debate saying, okay, we're not going to allow contradictions, right? I'm not going to say one thing a half hour ago and then deny it in the next half hour. Those things are known, agreed upon, correct? So Wi-Fi has methodically got DZ to do that to himself at this point.
So why should it apply to our conversation here?
Because it's a concept that we find valuable and it proves to be true when we apply it. When we apply it to the world,
And why do you find it valuable? So
now you can go into value and meaning, why that exists, why that's important. It's just his preference.
So why should it apply to our conversation here?
Because it's a concept that we find valuable and it proves to be true when we apply it.
Something we find valuable and proves to be true when we apply it. So he's
Right,
going to go into value and say, well, that's just my preference. Most people find it valuable too. Proves to be true when we apply it. So it is true or isn't? Well, it just seems to be the case. This is just atheist nonsense. He's drawing it out and making him say it out loud. This is valuable if you can see what's happening here.
Isn't there something I was going to say was also the fact that we are brought up in the laws of logic. Do you get what I'm saying?
No.
Like, as far as concept goes, like, we're brought up in a society that are built on these things. And how do we know that if there's no like he said it when outside the universe versus inside, we're inside the system. So how do we know if there's something without being outside the laws of logic, and whether that's actually coherent or not as the laws of logic? And that's all I'm trying to say. Which is hard to say in the first place because it sounds illogical to some degree.
When we apply it to the world, it
And why do
works.
you find it valuable? So that's pragmatism.
Yeah, until we find something where it doesn't work, then we'll have to alter it.
Yeah, pragmatism, exactly. Things seem to be this way. I like this. You like that too. We both like it. Let's build on it. Somebody comes along and says, well, why is that the case? Why is that true? Oh, we don't really want to talk about those things. We just want to pragmatically or practically like build a life. The assumptions and presuppositions, well, it's anybody's guess. That's
Yeah.
sort of the pragmatic approach. The pragmatist then wants to go into the Bible and point out why it's wrong, it's contradictory, and boohoo, this and that, when they've already skipped all the steps of the thing that they want to point to you and say, why are you following that as a foundation?
All right, it's
Well-
already the same value. The standards don't matter. Because they're
They
all
can't
meant to
really
stick
argue
around.
it if they're going to take the pragmatic approach, but they want to anyway. That's why you don't let them argue. You don't grant them that stuff. That makes sense to me. You know, why would I let the homeless guy come in and critique my house? Right?
And how do you determine what works and what
Based
doesn't?
on actual like testing and results. So if we put something to the test,
Based on if it works?
yeah, we test it. And when it works, we say, hey, that thing worked. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. Can you see how that is circular reasoning?
No, I'm an engineer. That's how we design everything in engineering. When the design doesn't work, we throw it away.
Okay, so you can tell if something works by if it works.
Yeah,
Okay.
because everything has a purpose intended with it. Like, so when I say I want to,
Everything has a purpose intended with it. From
That
a
goes back to the
pragmatist,
pen. That goes back to the pen and author thing I was talking about.
from a pragmatic view, a pragmatist, an atheist, he's going to talk about everything has purpose, a universal claim about purpose. You kidding me?
Okay, so you can tell if something works by if it works.
yeah,
Okay.
because everything has a purpose intended with it. Like, so when I say I want to design a ball that only flies straight, well, if I design a ball that flies straight, then guess what? It works.
So the laws of logic back there, they just don't exist, is what you said?
They're descriptions.
Okay, do descriptions exist?
Abstractly, yeah.
Okay, so
30
laws of
seconds
logic
left.
do.
No, they exist as abstract concepts in our brains.
They do exist.
That's it.
Oh man, he's just toying with him. He's getting him to show that his line of reasoning is popping these laws in and out of existence. It's a
This
great
is
job.
actually where I can make an argument where I think what he's speaking about logic. So if you take the idea of a car and what it makes to what it takes to make a car, the car itself does not exist and it never did exist. Like a car by itself, but the parts that go into making a car exist in different forms, and that's the transmutative property of the idea. And so there's no actual logic in that. It's just a taking a bunch of stuff and transforming it into different stuff, into something that is functional.
What do you mean there's no logic in there? The things you're speaking
It's-
of, you're identifying things.
If I take like a rock and I use it to
But you're
smash something like a
identifying
hammer,
things. You're identifying things. Those identities stay in place when you describe it. Whatever the identity of things go into that build another thing, that's a different identity. Those are logical laws.
well, a rock is still a rock. Hold up, you're making a problem here. A rock is a rock no matter what you call it. The name of a rock doesn't matter. It could be called
identity is
Finkelstein.
there.
It's still the thing. Right. The fact that the
Because of
physical
the
thing is
logic.
there is still there. No, it's not logic. It's because the physical thing is still there. It doesn't matter what we call it. It's because it's physically there.
Dude,
I can't call a rock if it's not there.
the idea of identity is that whatever you're calling the thing or describing it, it is the thing. In order to make sentences to talk about ideas, concepts, whatever you want to talk about, physical things, imaginary things, you need to identify them. You need to speak in a fluent manner that's not contradictory. It's apparent in all the things we're doing. It's inescapable. This guy, DZ, says, no, they're not real, and they are real, based on how you ask him. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
As
But before
abstract
you just said
concepts.
the laws of
Seconds
logic do.
No, they exist as abstract concepts in our brains
They do exist.
That's it. as
But
abstract
before you just said they don't
concepts.
exist.
They don't exist tangibly like the way you want it to be. They're not transcendental.
Okay. That's good. I'm good with my time. Thank you, James. Thank you,
Thank you
Justin.
very much, Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't really need to go any further, actually, but I don't really need to go further either. I'm done with this. I got something I got to do anyway, so I'm going to bail out, Todd.
All right. Well, have a good one.
All right, thanks for coming on. So if you go into a debate with somebody, I mean, I know it's set up in a way where, you know, he's a guest on James's show, so they got to go through the whole debate. But if you can get somebody to deny the laws of logic, they're done. Now, he not only did that, he got them to admit they exist, and then got them to pop them back in there. So they exist, they don't, they exist in this way, not that way. He's just pointed out fundamental folly in Deasy's worldview. And that's basically probably what he's going to keep resorting to in the debate, but I might watch it later, but I got to go now. But that was key. You know, from there on, he can always resort to his claim about logic. It's a constant problem. You can't work it out. The thing he's utilizing, presupposing, doesn't know it exists, doesn't know how it exists, still wants to use it. But yeah, I'm a little distracted myself now, but I got to go. Thanks for coming on, guys. I hope some of you can also jump in on a critique too. I wanted to say that because critiques are good ways where like, we can disagree, but we don't have to, you know, just be going one-on-one. We can look at what's happening in the debate and talk about it, then talk about our own worldview, but then go back to the debate. So it's a little bit less pressure than, you know, just coming on and having like a mini debate one-on-one. So just keep that in mind. Critiquing is a good way. It's got good middle ground territory to come on and express your opinion and explore ideas. Like, you know, Tog likes to come on and he just did that. And every now and then I just will start to ask Tog fundamental questions about his worldview. Because anytime he makes claims about the interlocutors, you know, why they're right, why they're wrong, what is so, Tog's still on the table to be questioned, right? Because he's the one bringing up the point. You can always point to Tog and say, how do you know that from your worldview? And basically do the same thing that Wi-Fi was doing to him, ask him questions about his assumptions, presuppositions. And, well, we'll just end there. That's going to be an ongoing theme, but thanks for coming. Grace and peace.